I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen being there.
Ain's jaw tightened as Camilla reached for the crown jewels. Those belonged to my mother. 7 words that shattered palace protocol. The seeds of royal discord. The tension between Princess and Queen Camilla didn't begin with a crown or a title. It started decades ago, in the shadows of a love triangle that would forever change the monarchy. Picture this. It's 1970, and a young Camilla Shand is captivating the heir to the throne at a polo match. But watching from the sidelines with her characteristic sharp gaze stood Princess and already sensing the storms this woman would bring to her family, and had always been her mother's fierce protector. When Queen Elizabeth II was alive, the Princess Royal served as an unbreakable shield around the crown. She witnessed firsthand how Camilla's presence fractured her brother's marriage to Diana. She saw the tears, the scandals, the newspaper headlines that made her beloved monarchy look like a soap opera. But here's what the public never knew. In 1996, during a private dinner at Highgrove, and confronted Charles about his relationship with Camilla. "You're destroying everything Mother built," she reportedly told him. Charles's response? A cold silence that would define their relationship for years to come. Can you imagine carrying that weight? Watching your brother choose love over duty, while you've sacrificed everything for crown. The real fracture came in 2005, when Charles married Camilla and attended the ceremony. Of course, duty demanded it. But eagle-eyed royal watchers noticed something peculiar. In every photograph from that day, and stands at maximum distance from the new Duchess of Cornwall, her smile never quite reaches her eyes. Some say she whispered to her husband that day, Mother would be heartbroken. For 17 years, and maintained a glacial politeness with Camilla. They performed their royal duties, attended state dinners, smiled for cameras. But behind palace walls, sources say they avoided each other like competing magnets, and would schedule her Buckingham Palace visits when Camilla was away. Camilla would find excuses to miss Anne's charity galas. Then came September 8, 2022, the day everything changed, the day Queen Elizabeth II took her final breath, and Camilla automatically became queen consort. But Anne, she became something else entirely, the guardian of her mother's true legacy. Do you think it was right to protect her mother's memory so fiercely? Share your thoughts below, because what happened next shocked even seasoned palace insiders. The jewelry box incident, November 15th, 2023, started like any ordinary Wednesday at Buckingham Palace. The autumn rain pelted against the windows as staff prepared for the state banquet honoring the president of South Korea. But in the Queen's dressing room, a confrontation was brewing that would send shockwaves through the monarchy. Camilla stood before the open vault containing the late Queen's personal jewelry collection. Her lady-in-waiting, Emma Wynne, was carefully lifting out the Greville emerald Kokeshnik, that stunning tiara Elizabeth had worn to countless state occasions. But as Camilla reached for the priceless piece, a voice cut through the room like ice. "I think not." Princess stood in the doorway, dressed in her naval uniform. Her bearing was ramrod straight, her expression carved from stone. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "And," Camilla said, forcing warmth into her voice, "I didn't expect you so early." Clearly, Anne's eyes never left the tiara. "That piece was commissioned by my great-great-grandmother. It has been worn by queens who were born to the role." The silence that followed could have shattered crystal. Emma Wynne later told friends she had never felt such tension in a room. Camilla's hands trembled slightly as she set down the velvet box. "I am the Queen," Camilla said quietly, each word deliberate, measured. "You are Charles's wife," and replied, "There's a difference." What happened next depends on which palace, source you believe. Some say Camilla's eyes filled with tears. Others insist she maintained perfect composure. But all agree on one detail, and walked to the vault, removed 3 specific pieces, the Kokeshnik, the Vladimir tiara, and the Delhi Durbar necklace, and handed them to her own aide. These belong to Elizabeth Alexander Mary Windsor, and stated, "They will be preserved for William's wife and daughter, as my mother intended." Camilla found her voice. "You have no authority. I have every authority." N's interruption was swift. "I am the Princess Royal. I am my mother's daughter, and I am the executor of her personal estate." She paused at the door. "Were the crown jewels, if you must. But my mother's private collection? That is not yours to claim." The confrontation lasted less than 5 minutes, but its reverberations would shake the palace for months. Within hours, the story had leaked, though both women would deny it happened. Charles was reportedly furious. William remained conspicuously silent. And the palace staff? They suddenly had to navigate between two queens, one by marriage, one by blood, behind closed doors. 3 days after the jewelry incident, an emergency family meeting was called, not in the grand staterooms, but in the king's private study, the same wood-paneled sanctuary where Elizabeth had made her hardest decisions. The participants, Charles, Camilla, and surprisingly, Prince William. A footman who was stationed outside later described hearing raised voices, something almost unheard of in royal circles. The meeting was supposed to last 30 minutes. It went on for 3 hours. "You've humiliated my wife," Charles reportedly began, his voice strained with controlled anger, in front of staff. "This behavior is beneath you," and sat perfectly still in the leather chair their mother once occupied. "What's beneath me," she replied, "is pretending that history can be rewritten with jewelry and titles." William, sources say, tried to play peacemaker. And surely we can find a compromise. Compromise? And turned to her nephew. "Your mother's engagement ring came from that collection. The earring she wore to your christening. The necklace she wore when she held you for the first time." Her voice softened slightly. "Some things, William, are not meant for compromise." Camilla, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "I have never tried to replace Diana, or your mother, and I have only tried to support Charles." By wearing her crown, Anne's question hung in the air like a blade. Charles slammed his hand on the desk. A rare display of temper. "Enough. Camilla is my queen. She will be accorded every respect. Respect is earned and shot back. Mother knew that. Diana knew that. The people know that." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "You may demand their curtsy, Charles, but you cannot command their hearts." The most painful moment came when Anne turned to leave. Charles, in a voice barely above a whisper, asked, "Do you hate her that much?" And paused at the door. When she turned back, witnesses say her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I don't hate Camilla," she said quietly. "I pity her. She will spend the rest of her life trying to fill shoes that were never meant for her. And you, brother, you will spend yours pretending not to notice they don't fit." The door closed with a soft click, but the chasm it represented would prove impossible to bridge. William later told Harry in a private phone call, "I've never seen Aunt and like that. It was like watching Granny, but with all the filters off." Later that night, long after the voices had faded and the palace halls were quiet, Camilla stepped into the private garden behind Clarence's house. A footman passing by heard her whisper into night air, "I never wanted the crown. I just wanted him." It wasn't a statement of regret. It was a moment of truth, a rare glimpse into the woman behind the title, carrying the weight of both love and legacy. When palaces leak, within 48 hours of the family meeting, the British press had the story. "Anne's fury," screamed the Daily Mail. "Jewel thief?" questioned the Sun, with an unflattering photo of Camilla. The palace's initial response was typical, dignified silence. But this time, silence wasn't enough. Royal correspondent Rebecca English later revealed, "My phone didn't stop ringing. I had sources from both camps desperate to get their version out. The leaks painted two very different pictures. Team Camilla portrayed and as bitter, stuck in the past, unable to accept change. Tiemann painted Camilla as greedy, overreaching, disrespectful to Elizabeth's memory. The public relations war reached its peak during the state opening of Parliament. Royal watchers noticed immediately and wore the festoon tiara, one of the pieces she had protected from Camilla. The message was crystal clear. Even more telling, the order of procession. Protocol dictated Camilla should enter immediately after Charles. Instead, there was a notable gap filled by William and Catherine, and entered last as Princess Royal. But her entrance generated the loudest murmurs from the assembled lords and commons. Body language expert Judy James analyzed the footage. Watkins curtsied to Charles. It's technically perfect, but emotionally vacant. Now watch her interaction with Camilla, or rather, the complete lack of one. They don't make eye contact once during the entire ceremony. The international press had a field day. American outlets, always fascinated by royal drama, ran endless segments. It's Dynasty, but with crowns, one CNN commentator quipped. French newspapers compared it to Versailles intrigue. Even the typically respectful Japanese media couldn't resist the story. But the real damage came from within. Palace staff began choosing sides. Some refused to address Camilla as Your Majesty, instead using the technically correct but pointed ma'am. Others made sure its flowers were always slightly less fresh, her tea slightly too cold. The palace, one insider revealed, felt like a beautiful prison where everyone was watching everyone else. Then came the photographs that broke royal protocol entirely. At the Royal Windsor Horse Show, and was captured in animated conversation with someone unexpected, Sarah Ferguson. Fergie, who had been persona non grata for decades, was suddenly back in Anne's orbit. The message to Camilla couldn't have been clearer. Even the exiled Duchess of York ranked higher in Anne's estimation than the current queen. Charles tried damage control. He had William and Catherine photograph having tea with Camilla. He ensured she prominent placement at Trooping the Color. But every orchestrated photo opportunity felt exactly that, orchestrated. The public, who had spent decades reading between royal lines, weren't fooled. The Princess Royal's ancient right. What the palace hoped to keep buried was a fascinating piece of royal history that gave it more power than anyone realized. Deep in the royal archives lies a document from 1714, when George I established the modern role of Princess Royal. It grants the holder perpetual guardian rights over the personal effects of queens deceased. This was a mere ceremony. It was born from the chaos following Queen Anne's death, when her personal jewels vanished into the hands of German cousins. King George, determined to prevent future raids on royal treasures, gave his daughter, and every Princess Royal after, legal authority over deceased queen's personal property. For 3 centuries, this right lay dormant. Princess Mary, George V's daughter, never invoked it. Neither did Anne herself during previous transitions. But Camilla's ascension activated something primal in the Princess Royal, a need to protect not just jewelry, but legacy itself. Royal historian Dr. Emma Thornton explained, what and did wasn't just emotional, it was constitutionally sound. She has every legal right to determine the disposition of her mother's personal collection. The crown jewels belong to the state, yes, but Elizabeth's private pieces, those are technically under Anne's authority until she decides otherwise. This revelation sent shockwaves through royal circles. If Anne could control the jewels, what else could she influence? The Queen Mother's art collection? Elizabeth's private correspondence? The very narrative of the late Queen's legacy? Even more intriguing was a clause discovered by researchers. The Princess Royal's authority extends to matters of protocol and precedence within the royal household. In essence, Anne didn't just have the right to protect physical objects, she had the ancient authority to define who was worthy of them. Charles's advisors scrambled to find legal countermeasures. They discovered none. The 1714 document had been signed by the monarch and ratified by Parliament. It would take an act of Parliament to override it, a political nightmare Charles couldn't afford. Imagine the optics. One conservative MP noted privately. The king asking Parliament to strip his sister's historical rights so his wife can wear his mother's jewels? Political suicide. To understand this conflict, you must understand these women. They represent two entirely different visions of what a queen should be. Princess and the Iron Princess, at 73, and remains the hardest working royal, undertaking over 500 engagements yearly. She wakes at 5:30 a.m., reads briefings over black coffee, and attacks her schedule with military precision. No small talk, no frivolity, just duty. Those who know her describe a woman of stark contrasts. Publicly, she's brusque, even rude. She once told a reporter badgering her about fashion, "I'm not a clothes horse. I'm a working horse." Privately, she's fiercely loyal, wickedly funny, and surprisingly emotional about family, and doesn't do gray areas, says a former aide. Things are right or wrong. People are worthy or they're not. And once she's made up her mind, Mount Vesuvius would be easier to move. Her relationship with her mother was legendary. While Charles sought approval and Andrew chased pleasure and simply served, she was there for the daily duties Charles found boring. She was the one who could make the Queen laugh with cutting observations about pompous dignitaries. When Elizabeth's health failed, it was and who spent the most time at her bedside, reading her racing results and gossip from the stable yards. The Queen didn't need to say she had a favorite, one courtier observed, and was simply always there, like breathing. Queen Camilla, the survivor. At 76, Camilla has achieved what once seemed impossible. She married a man she loved and became Queen of England. But the crown sits uneasily on a head that spent decades being vilified as the other woman. Her daily routine reflects hard-won confidence. She rises at 7:30 a.m., positively leisurely by royal standards. She reads actual newspapers, not just briefings. She insists on proper meals, not in the habit of eating sandwiches while standing. She laughs loudly, drinks gin and tonic, and refuses to apologize for enjoying life. Camilla has warmth and lacks, admits even a critic. She remembers names, asks about grandchildren, puts nervous people at ease. She's naturally kind in a way that can't be faked. But that warmth comes with insecurity. She checks social media comments, something and would never dream of doing. She notices when crowds are thin, when applause is tepid. She keeps a mental tally of who uses her title and who avoids it. The tragedy is that in another life, these women might have been friends. Both love horses, dogs, and country life. Both have sharp wit and no patience for fools. Both married difficult men and made it work. But history placed them on opposite sides of an unbridgeable divide and sees Camilla as a symbol of everything that went wrong, explains a palace insider. And Camilla, she sees and as a guardian of a past that will never accept her. They're both right, and that's why it's so hopeless. Where things stand now. Chapter card. An uneasy truce. Today, Buckingham Palace operates under what staff call the cold peace. Anne and Camilla perform their duties, attend the same events, but exist in parallel universes that rarely intersect. At last month's diplomatic reception, photographers captured a telling moment. Anne entered the ballroom and immediately turned left, greeting the Norwegian ambassador. Camilla entered moments later and turned right toward the French delegation. They orbited the room like opposing magnets, maintaining perfect distance without ever appearing to avoid each other. It's actually quite masterful, observed one diplomat. They've turned avoidance into an art form. The strain shows in small ways. Charles looks tired, older than his years. He's taken holding separate meetings with Anne and Camilla rather than risk another confrontation. William plays careful diplomat, ensuring Catherine divides her time equally between both women. Even the corgis, yes, Elizabeth's remaining dogs, seem to sense attention, refusing to settle when both women are present. The jewelry situation remains unresolved and still controls access to Elizabeth's private collection. Camilla wears pieces from the crown collection, but nothing personal of Elizabeth's. At the recent state banquet for Japan, she wore the diamond diadem, spectacular but impersonal, and, attending the same event, wore her mother's favorite aquamarine clips, small but devastatingly significant. Palace staff have adapted to this new reality with typical British ingenuity. There are now 2 preparation rooms for state events, 2 separate tea services, even 2 different florists, after an unfortunate incident involving competing rose arrangements. We've essentially created 2 courts within one palace, admits a senior courtier. It functions, but it's exhausting. The public has chosen sides too. Opinion polls show a generational divide. Older Britons overwhelmingly support and seeing her as a keeper of true royal values. Younger people, when they care at all, tend towards sympathy for Camilla, the woman trying to do an impossible job while being compared to a saint and a martyr. But perhaps the most telling sign of where things stand came during the king's recent birthday celebration. The official photograph showed the working royals arranged around Charles and stood to his right, the position of honor. Camilla stood to his left, technically equal but symbolically secondary. And between them, Charles smiled the careful smile of a man holding his family together through sheer will. The monarchy will survive, predicts constitutional expert Vernon Bogdaner. It has survived worse. But this quiet war between 2 formidable women may define Charles's reign more than any policy or proclamation. Will time heal this royal rift? Or are some wounds too deep for even a crown to cover? More importantly, in this battle between bloodline and marriage, tradition and change, whose vision of the monarchy will prevail? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Are you team and standing firm for tradition? Or Team Camilla, embracing a more modern monarchy? And if this inside look at palace intrigue fascinated you, don't miss our next deep dive. Kate versus Meghan, the real story behind the bridesmaid dress tears. Click here to uncover the truth the palace never wanted you to know. Remember to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Because in the world of royalty, drama never takes a day off.